Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us in this first dry run of the Cyber Board Book project. We have been very fortunate to have had this had a couple of previous meetings for the past 3 months. We have been able to build up a momentum towards this, and Mark was one of the first ones joining us in the first meeting as well when we did this NASDAQ. And so subsequent to the initial ideation phase, we put together a charter that we are going to follow. As you can imagine, there are obviously a lot of prior art, so to speak, is done. There have been, very significant work that has been done in this space of Cyber Board Book by NSCD, by the World Economic Forum, by many other prominent organizations, and Internet Security Alliance with Larry Clinton. So just to give this a ground up view, the opportunity that we have with this project under CFF umbrella is to make sure we expand the community's voice into this, provide everyone the ability to chime in, whether they are a practitioner on the operations side, in the management, or those in the board. The initial goal of this Cyber Board Book project is to make sure that we are able to capture not only the number of questions that we have from different practitioners who are stepping into board roles or are going to present to board. We believe that we not only have the responsibility as a significant part of our community has done this before, to answer the question how to present to board, but also enable new leaders who are going to be taking on responsibilities representing in the board, as well as a cyber representative into the board. So it's all about cyber representation in the overall board discussion, and I welcome your thoughts and advice to prepare a living document that will continue to inform and guide those that are going to participate. There are 4 objectives of this project. The first one is making sure that we equip the CFF community leaders who are taking on this board engagement, whether in the board or as a cyber representative into the board, presenting their programs and plans. So enable and equip them. Second is to raise the awareness of the business and risk management aspects that need to be considered during a board conversation, and prepare this early. There are tremendous amount of resources that are available that have been crafted, as I mentioned, by multiple kind of prominent organizations, and we will bring those resources together and share and raise the awareness. We don't typically create anything from new because we kind of stand on the shoulders of giants. I think that is that strength that we have in the community, and many of our members are also members of those organizations, and we expect that they will bring in those learnings. The third part is the living document piece, right? Which is basically, this is, it takes quite a bit of substantial time to put together a book, but then again, the book goes stale very quickly. In this world, especially in cyber, when things are moving very, very fast, we want to make sure that we have a community of volunteers, leaders, and leaders, practitioner leaders, who are actually contributing this on an ongoing basis. This becomes a living project. And the first edition of this, which is what we have gathered to do here. The fourth is timeline. The timeline of this project, we have definitely some significant milestones. We started this project in Q3, September of 2022. We had the initial announcement in our Davos program in January of this year, 2023. We are looking at the next milestones to be the RSA conference, which is up in another 3 months. So by the end of April, we want to get to a point where we have a very good structure, a draft that we can share with the larger organizations, and that's why we put together a full team to support this. And you'll probably hear more about our friend from Arunish, Sean Cho, and Kalol, who are programmatically helping us. There are going to be regional leaders who are going to support this, and we welcome your nomination for those for running the program coordination, running the working groups, and the regional coordination that needs to happen. This is and will be a global voice that's reflects the organization that CFF is, and obviously we are looking for contribution from you, but ongoing support to make sure. In terms of operations, we expect that we will schedule recordings with you and other leaders, and those recorded sessions are going to be in the format of a webinar, so people can join and listen to it. It's not just a one-way monologue or just a fireside chat. We expect that at every opportunity we engage with our community members. They're able to join and contribute as well as learn from this. When it's your turn to do the recording, it would be about 30 to 45 minutes time, what we will be asking. We have initially set these meetings up for 2-hour slots. We will, eventually reduce this to 45 minutes, and we expect that we'll have 2 45-minute slots. Each 45-minute window will include a webinar formatted discussion, and that's pretty much going to be contributing the initial chapter views for you. So we have a transcribing service joining this meeting that takes this voice, transcribes it. Of course, it has to be a little bit of work to translate that, but transcribe that into text, and then we'll have editorial review as well as final review by the community, and that will be subsequent to the recordings. We expect that it will be in 2-week sprints. So if you get recorded and your webinar goes out today, in 2 weeks from now we will have a transcript that's ready for review. So we'll be about 2-week cycles to do this. We have two meeting windows. One is in the morning of US Central Time, this time 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Central Time, where we will accommodate the voice of the the western part of APAC, Asian Pacific, and EMEA, Africa. I mean, we have representatives everywhere. We want to give them the time to join us. And we'll do this in phases. So the first phase is going to be those 2-hour blocks, and for subsequent weeks we're going to have this on your calendar. You can always accept or decline based on your availability, and these 2 hours will have at least 2 recordings so that we can quickly get onto the actual content development. These also are going to be available and streamed into the member platform, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and share the resources with you. These meetings are going to be recorded so that people can refer to this after we are done with these meetings. The other key part is that there is definitely going to be some level of review and approval. If you are representing yourself, whether part of an organization, we typically recommend that you represent yourself, not the organization, so that you will not have as much restrictions. You can actually put this in your caveat, and we're going to share the consent letters subsequent to this meeting, where you can work it through your organization, get the approvals that you need, if there is a process within yourself. But for the most part, we expect that you're going to be representing yourself, and as a professional, this is part of a professional development and giving back. And typically, we have not seen much of a challenge to this in this process. Now, quick 30 seconds on the subsequent weeks of work. What we'll do today is basically capture some of your voices. That's kind of a warm-up exercise. Then in subsequent meetings, we will get your recording set so that you can spend. Of course, today I believe we'll have a little bit more time because we have this many participants that are able to join. So if anybody volunteers to come up and talk about the 4 aspects of each chapter, structurally, we have a point of view, a case study, a kind of guide to or steps to resolve an issue, and then kind of standard guidelines. Each of this content is going to be finally prepared to a space where it's like a bifold. You are able to look at these 4 sections and be prepared to go to these meetings. Of course, there is going to be a lot of additional components that are going to be added, and more details that are going to be reserved both for members as well as those participants that are joining us. So with that, I know some of you have to actually drop off early, and I appreciate you joining and being able to make the time. And going by what you heard from the beginning of the meeting. Probably do a quick round of introductions for the first 15 minutes, and then you can drop off, and then subsequently, based on your availability, we will request you to go kind of give a warm up in point of view on the 4 areas. There are 6 topics, 4 areas of in structurally in this chapter, so you can pick and choose within the 6. Once the introduction is done, I'll get into a little bit of what the structurally those topics are. So I would like to recognize my friend here, Brian Levine. I know you have to drop the earliest, so give you the stage and the forum just to talk about a little bit about yourself. Please try to keep it within the first 5 minutes so that we can give the same courtesy to others. So Brian, welcome to the program, and thank you for your time and your contribution here. So
thanks, Val.
The stage is yours.
Thank you for having me. I will keep it definitely to 5 minutes or less. Brian Levine. I work at EY. I'm managing director of EY's transaction, cybersecurity, and data privacy group. So we're a group of 50 cyber and data privacy geeks that focus primarily on the transaction space. So in the last 8 years, we've conducted over 1,000 cybersecurity and data privacy due diligences. We also work on integration. We work on separation. We work on implementation and remediation. We help private equity secure their portfolios during their holder value creation period. We work on IPO readiness and exit readiness from a sell-side diligence perspective. And I also talk to a lot of boards and boards of directors and audit committees about security. I have an unusual background for consulting. I joined EY about 4 years ago from the U.S. Department of Justice, where I was actually a cybercrime prosecutor and national coordinator for the other 300 cybercrime prosecutors around the country. Prior to that, I was a regulator with the New York Attorney General's office and their Internet and Technology Bureau. And prior to that, I spent about 10 years doing technology litigation for some pretty large law firms, primarily Morrison & Foerster in Palo Alto, better known as MoFo, and Paul Weiss in New York, which is another good firm, but has no funny abbreviation. So that's me, and I'm based out of I live in Bethesda, Maryland. I work out of our Tysons, Virginia office, so DC area, and look forward to working with you guys on this project.
Thank you, Brian. It's been always a pleasure to have you, and I have the good fortune to working with you. So looking forward to your contribution and your thoughts. Hopefully this will definitely, I believe it will inform the larger practitioners in this space. So thank you again for your time.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you. Mark, maybe we move to you next and get your background, a little bit of introduction for the rest of the group.
Sure. I'm Mark Orsi. I'm the CEO of Global Resilience Federation. So we manage and support 17 different information sharing communities. We spun out of FSISAC, which is sort of the largest, longest known, longest running information sharing analysis center. Basically, we provide collective defense for organizations to come together, collaborate to help protect them against the threat actors out there. I have a long background from aerospace engineering to the last 15 years in cybersecurity, where I was in the financial services sector and working for Goldman Sachs and then KPMG and then JP Morgan. So happy to be here and contributing.
Thank you, Mark, and thanks for being one of the first ones to start this project. So glad to have you back here. We'll continue to, get your thoughts here. Next, I'll move to Maya, if you are able to come online and talk about, give a little bit of background and share your thoughts.
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Maya Bund. I live in Switzerland, so I'm probably one of the people this whole agenda reshuffling had to take place. So sorry for that. I have spent 20 years in reinsurance working for Swiss Re, and over the last 10 years of that, I built up the Swiss Re's cyber insurance practice globally. I quit my operational role in summer of last year and are now concentrating on my portfolio of non-executive director roles, which one of them is also in insurance, one bank, an advertising company, and some other cyber hobbies. I'm also chairing the cyber resilience chapter of the Swiss Risk Association. And I'm very excited to be here and be able, hopefully, to contribute a little bit to this project, because that is actually, one of my favorite hobbies, so to speak.
Well, absolutely. And I think not only a hobby, but you've been a great contributor over the several years that we have known you and each other. What happened or what started from Davos doesn't need to be restricted there. And our goal is to make sure your voice is heard and, of course, the contributions registered. So thank you, Maya, for joining us. Well, in good time, we have Diana. So I'll probably start with Dr. Burley. Diana, thank you for joining us. We are doing a quick round of introductions before we get into the points of view section. So welcome you to introduce yourself and let everyone know who you are.
Thank you. Sorry to be late. Happy to be here. I'm Diana Burley. I am Vice Provost for Research and Innovation at American University here in DC. And have been working on the CFF Advisory Board and really all over the world for the last 15 or so years on cyber workforce issues, how to build, how to structure programs, how to strategize about increasing the diversity of the workforce, and speaking with CISOs about the risks associated with not having a proper cyber workforce. Also do some work in cyber awareness, so I'm not sure what else I'm supposed to say, Val, because I missed the opening, but that's at least a little bit of me.
That's great. I think we're just doing a quick round of introductions, and I'm sure we will do this a couple of times before the whole team gets to know each other. And thank you, Diana, for sharing your background. Well, let me move to Diana Kelly, my good friend and colleague.
So as Diana Burley said, again, apologies for being late. Great to be here. I am Diana Kelly. I'm currently Val's business partner at Cybrise, where I am the CSO for strategy and for security. And I've been on the board of advisors for CFF for a couple of years now. And my past is I have a 30+ year experience in cybersecurity, actually in networking and IT, almost all that focused on security because someone got onto my network and I was like, never again. And I've had experience both all across the spectrum. I have been in line, pulled cables, admin Unix boxes, I've written software all the way up to being the cybersecurity field CTO at Microsoft and the global executive security advisor at IBM, where I would fly around the world and speak to some of the largest customers and governments about their cybersecurity needs.
Excellent. Thank you, Diana. And then I should mention that Diana is probably the first CSO squared.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Next, let's introduce the team who's been working in the back end and making this happen. And Arunish shares the first of such roles on many projects, but this one particularly. So Arunish, thank you for all your help so far putting this program together. And please introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Arunish Salhotra. I head application security for Nomura. It's a Japanese bank. And just a little background for myself. I consider myself to be a technologist generalist. Just like Diana mentioned, I mean, I've gone through many things in my career, being a developer to managing infrastructure, networking, cloud, audit, compliance, pre-sales. I've done like many things in my career. And so I was involved in a similar initiative called Purple Book Community, which is a consortium of application security leaders across the world. And I'm really excited to actually be part of CFF. I mean, I got involved in CFF literally in the last two and a half months or so. And I serve on a couple of advisory boards for some cybersecurity organizations, firms, and a big support for DI initiatives within my company and outside. And I'm a big golfer. That's thanks, Val, for giving me an opportunity.
Excellent. Thank you, Arunish. Again, thanks for all your help. we have also our core team members, Catherine and Jen. So Catherine, I would like for you to go next, just to give a quick introduction about you.
Good morning or afternoon, everyone. Catherine Thompson. I apologize. I'm getting over the flu here, so I was off camera. I have been working with Val for almost 3 years now. My core responsibility is to build out the ecosystem. So working with partners, potential partners and community members, both within North America and outside of North America. I'm very honored to be working with all of you on this project and look forward to supporting the initiative moving forward.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Catherine. Jen, are you able to come up? Okay, thank you, Jen.
I'm Jen Foy. I have been working with CFF in different ways for about a year now and have a nonprofit background, and yeah.
So Jen keeps it very modest and low, but she ran one of the largest nonprofit charities around the world, World Relief, and she took a leap of faith to come help us. And we'll be doing the recycling of that nonprofit charity world soon. So we have plenty of news coming up. Again, so thank you all. I think this is a great dry run. I mean, to make sure that we are able to tap into the time that you are available. If you have to drop early, please don't hesitate. Drop early. What I would do in the next couple of minutes is kind of focus on the chapter and the structure. I believe we'll have the same question from many participants who are going to join us through the program, and happy to share this over and over again. But I think we have been very focused on what we want to achieve through this program. Again, not reinventing the wheel, but making sure we have continuity. Two things primarily. One is continuity of the content that is required to prepare both sides of the board. Those are preparing to present to the board and those that are participating in the board, and which we have pretty decent representation here in this meeting, and then subsequently capture those voices. So let me just quickly share here the and thank you, Brian. We'll see you next time. So the one that we have, let me share the screen here real quick. And this should be also in your mailbox as we have been sharing. So we have in the first 3 months, we found out that there are certain areas that really need work on, and we get to answer this over and over again. From the discussions, we had first 6 chapters, so to speak, 6 areas that we need to focus, and they are cyber expertise in board. And there are points of views on both sides. If you tune back out, into the recording that we have for the cyber board book announcement and the panel we had in Davos, you will see there is a very strong opinion about which side the cyber should and how much expertise is required. Whether the entire board is to be, very well informed, of course, should be, but also have an expert on the board, or they just need to have general information and they need to lean on additional experts from outside. So I believe that's a first thing to tackle head on. That's an area that should not be ambiguous. It should be very clear as to what the expectation in terms of the expertise in the board is as it relates to the other functions, business functions, including legal, finance, and business itself. And the second one is how is the board informed? That's another very key topic. I believe that from the discussions that we have had in the past few months and of course several years of experience, is that board information typically had been very kind of on the schedule, on the time, but as there are more cyber incidents happening, there is more and more demand to have the board more closely informed. So however, there needs to be some structure around that, and not all organizations kind of follow the same route, so have different nuances and contexts that will be informed by this broad audience that our contributors that we're pulling in. Second is, based on that information, how does the board act? and the board acts on different scales and levels. And sometimes there are special projects that are run by the board. So we want to make sure we have a very good view on how does the board act. The fourth one is basically focused on companies in transition, and an organization is typically always in transition. There is growth, there is divestiture, there is M&A, and different transformation opportunities going on. So this is a perpetual thing, and we want to start with typically the M&A structure, M&A and divestiture, especially with a lot of large organizations that we have been working with, both CFF members and broader community. They have been going through significant transitions, and we want to make sure that we have a recipe for that. The fifth chapter is around board and CISO relationships. We want to have a very clear call out on that. I believe this has been not necessarily just debatable as to how much access the CISO actually has and to the board, and through how many tiers and all that. I believe there is definitely need to be a way to dissect that and make sure you have a clear idea of where it needs to be and how it needs to be. Then otherwise it could be very disrupting for the business. And when to engage board. So if you look at chapter 2 and chapter 6, this kind of looks at it in two different ways. When do you engage board? And as you are, or at least those that have been part of different boards, which many of you are, the ways to engage board are both there are formal ways, there are informal ways, and it should not be that you are engaged with the board only during the board meetings and prior and leading up to it, right? Typically, we have seen that many organizations have a regular audit committee meetings separately, and the board, hears about cyber. It's typically tied to the audit committee, but that also is changing. So, as we explore the cyber expertise in the board, we would actually have more resources and advisors to leverage. So these 6 chapters or topics are the ones we are going to start exploring, and then talk about the and the one thing that's constant across these is the structure of each of these chapters. As I said, it has to be very easy for us to consume. So basically a bifold or a 4-page max, are what we're going to do in the initial content. Points of view will capture both sides, pros and cons, supporting information decision metrics that arises out of that point of view. Then a case study. I would request and welcome case studies from different sources. It could be your organization if you're able to share without any confidentiality issue or privilege issue, or if you have something that is public that you want to opine on, please let us know in a zero opinion. And then specifically a guidance in practice. So these are the 4 structures. And I saw a hand raise. I will switch over to Maya to take your question. Please, Maya, feel free to talk.
Thank you, Val. A quick question. I had just a discussion, or several discussions lately with CISOs who were wondering how to train their boards. I think that fits in with chapter 1 on the cyber expertise, where honestly, I believe there needs to be this cyber director, but there also needs a basic volume of expertise or knowledge with each and every director there. Now, to get there and to get the existing directors who do not have any prior or deep cyber or technology or digitalization knowledge, how to get them up to a level where then you can have a different discussion, right? I think that is a question that comes up again and again, and I was wondering whether that is not missing here in the chapters.
Yes, I think that's a very valid point, and absolutely agree that we should give it a very clear thought, and the professional development, including that in sometimes formally, and I think eventually it will be formal part of the board course. I believe NSCD does that now as part of their board briefings. They have cybersecurity briefings as well, and there is a certification attached to it. And
there's
absolutely
nothing like that in Europe, I can tell you. Worlds here, right? So I think that is maybe it's also a question that comes to me since I'm in a different area, but yeah.
So I think that's good to know as to where the market is probably underserved, and there's opportunity for us to come and help. And we will bring it to the markets that are there. So whether it's our direct training or with other partners, we are going to make sure that that's available. So I really love the way you're approaching this, Maya. It's not just telling people what to do, but practically getting the resources that they could use. So we'll be happy to explore the next steps on that.
It even starts, and this is why I bring it here, because I think it might be, you know, it might be important for us to make a statement to this. What do we believe is best practice that each and every, you know, director actually should know, just to kind of not a complete curriculum, but so people can have an understanding of that.
So not only give them a paper handbook, but actually train, you know, walk them through it and make it a part of their learning experience. Okay, excellent. So I think that's an action item we will definitely take on. From a CFF standpoint, I can share with you that we have a huge focus on the education part. We have been investing in it over the period of time, and this is something we really think should be leveraged by the wider community. So happy to work with you on that part. And Catherine and Jen, if you want to chime in on the education pieces, you know, there are 5 towers, so this is one key area. And specifically, you know, to get a little bit of more insight, Maya, if I may share with the rest of the community that we had this discussion on in Davos. That discussion is recorded. Probably we start with that as a kind of a initial introduction to the point of view. Okay. So on this particular topic, any other thoughts or opinions, especially on the expertise on board? I believe some of you have participated prior, but if you want to share anything, please feel free to raise your hand, and we can get your thoughts recorded.
This is Mark. I just agree that, you know, some baseline understanding, and certainly it'll have to be sort of individualized, because some will have deep knowledge and some will have no knowledge at all. But it also, whatever they're learning at the board, needs to be the same language that the CISO is going to be using, right? So it, you know, the CISO should have the same, go through the same training, or is the same, you know, have the same understanding, or right? It can't be 2 different things, right? You can't go through some standard training with the board and then have the CISO present something completely different.
So no, I think they should be.
May I add to that, Mark? I think very often the CISO will be asked to provide the training.
Yes, right. I'm just thinking, if we're gonna recommend some specific curriculum, or right, if we're gonna do some recommendations, I think you're absolutely right. I think the CISO should be the one recommending the training, because they're going to use the same language and frameworks and whatever they're discussing there.
Well, that's educating the board. Do you also have any thoughts on educating the CISOs? Because I think the Chief Information Security position is a relatively newer position in the overall board, and you know, in the history of business, probably, you know, I would say a decade in progress. So we also need to have a training and education program for the CISOs, and that probably comes from the board. So it's a mutual 2-way road, and this journey lands somewhere where both the, you know, management, which is CISO, is a part of it now, not necessarily probably formally non-cases, but in most cases the management also gets the learning from the board and board members, or who have kind of had CISO present to them, not necessarily in the way they would learn and be able to make informed decisions, right? So it's a 2-way street. Okay, so I think that's going to be a key topic that we're going to touch on. So we are hearing a lot about the points of view. I'll tell you from my personal observation as to how we are getting the information in, are able to contribute to all these areas. We have lots of points of view which we are capturing. What we want to augment this and support those points of view is supporting information and decision metrics, right? So please give your thoughts to it. I don't think and expect that it will be impromptu. Please give some thoughts to it and see what are the different supporting information that we need to augment our point of view with, and what kind of decision metrics we need to follow. If we have a very strong board who's very focused and experienced with cyber, in that case, probably an incoming CISO in that organization needs to be really oriented towards that board and the way the board operates and the engagement happens, right? So that kind of decision metrics we would need to include in the content. The second one that I think needs really good help is case studies. There are some high-profile case studies across all of these chapters or topics that we have seen that we can pull in. So I'd like your help to aggregate some of that. If you get from your own research or own learning, if you are able to find something, please feel free to share with the community, and we will make sure that they are captured and on. Then, as these three things shape up, I think the guidance in practice is the one that is most actionable, areas that we can actually contribute to. I believe that will come from at least 3 or 4 iterations. You can't just put a guidance together with a few conversations or points of view, and that is something that we believe later half of this project we will focus on. So we'll go capture the points of view across each of these topics and go move on. While I have you all here, probably get a little bit of thoughts from each of you or those that can contribute to this in terms of how is the board informed. Different organizations have different organizational cadence as to how the board is informed. Please share your thoughts, and feel free to raise your hand. I'll hand over the mic to you. Okay. So Maya, you want to go first?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so from my personal experience, there is a reporting schedule, yearly reporting schedule. It can be once a year, it can be twice a year, but usually not more than that, right? Where the board, then has the CISO explaining what is going on, maybe talking about the cybersecurity program. Obviously, there is ad hoc reporting if there's an incident, and ad hoc discussions as well. So that is something that is happening as well in my experience. There is also the question of whether it's the full board or whether it's a committee. Again, here in Europe, very, very seldomly do I see a cybersecurity committee or a technology and cyber committee or something like that. Usually, since it's going to be looked at from the risk side, it would go into the risk or audit committee or both. Maybe there is a stronger discussion there. What I see, or what I personally like to do, as I'm usually the kind of the cyber director in the boards that I serve in, I try to have a more personal discussion with the CISO on a more regular basis, sit down with them on one-on-ones, have in-depth discussions to not only get the kind of the beautiful slides, but also the understanding of how they are working in the organization, what's going on, to get a better gut feeling actually of where the organization is at.
That makes sense, and I think the cadence moving from just having one-on-one cadence once or twice a year to having a more focused cadence with the specific committee members, and then subsequently having a regular engagement or maybe a board briefing or board member briefing, then a full board briefing are probably the 3 tiers that we can think of, so that the entire board is well informed. Of course, there are considerations for disclosure, which I believe needs to be considered as we do that, that whether it's on the record or off the record. Sometimes you have only so much, plausible deniability when you have had that discussion. So thank you, Maya. I think we will consider that and also include the different nuances that will guide the practitioners. Any other thoughts here?
Yeah, similar to what Maya was saying, but I was just thinking about WESIS, for example, because we've grown pretty large. And so we have the VCISO. It's not a full-time CISO, it's a fractional CISO. And she presents for about 20 minutes to the board during our quarterly board meetings. That's on average. Sometimes she doesn't get there, so it could be closer to what Maya was saying, with 2 times, but that's sort of the top level cadence. And then we do have a security council. 2 of the board members are on the Security Council, and the Security Council meets with the VCISO once a month to do those interim checks. So she presents to us every month there. If there's something, as Maya was talking about, that we need to escalate, that would be the opportunity that we could escalate it outside of those quarterly or almost quarterly updates to the.
Yeah, I think that's good to know. And again, I think Diana used threw a spotlight on a very important aspect of our mission, which is basically larger organizations typically have a little bit more structured framework where they have a full-time CISO or someone, but I think it's as important to have a support and structure and guidance for majority of the organizations which don't, and especially are served by fractional CISOs such as ourselves, and see how we can improve their risk management and information to the board. So thank you, Diana. I have one question in terms of how do we assimilate this learning into a little bit of academic way, and how can we make the professional development, baseline higher, and this is probably a little bit longer term, so that we can include this in the academic curriculum of MBA or other educational programs. Any thoughts on that? And Mark, I recognize you, and I'll just have a quick. This is a quick question for Dr. Burley. If you are able to give a quick guidance on how do we integrate this into the academic functions so that we are not waiting until very late when professionals are already at the job and not able to and have to kind of rush through this process.
So let me say maybe 3 things on that. 2 are related to content, and then 1 is on process. So in terms of content, I think, we see that CISOs come down different paths, right? Some come from a more strategic risk orientation, and some come from a more technical orientation. And so when we're thinking about the content, we have to think about how to frame it for those 2 very broad groups. That will also help us to figure out where to go in terms of how to integrate it. When we think about the process part, integrating into the MBA programs or whatever type of program there is, there's a couple of different ways that we can go. One is certainly by starting with a handful of institutions that we might consider sort of a pilot captured audience where we have friends, and we can begin to think about the right way to put the content into existing courses such that we can sort of stream that content over time. The other is to put a full curriculum together and to offer that as an addendum to current offerings, existing offerings, whether they're for credit or not for credit. And so I think part of it will depend on how things shape out, but those are at least some initial approaches. And then the only other thing that I will say, and this is the other point on the content, when we're talking about educating CISOs, we're talking about 2 different things. One is, particularly in the context of communicating with the board, one is the content of what they have to do. The other is how they communicate to the board about that. Those are very different. And so when we're developing this content, we have to think about those differences so that we can then target appropriately once it's done.
Sounds good. Thank you, Tori. Mark, I know you have to go also, so want to give you a chance
this was that folds right in, Diana. That was a perfect comment, because when I was looking at this topic, I was thinking about that most of the CISOs and the technology professionals that sort of rise to this level are not really good at communicating in non-technical terms initially, right? So it's that training about using plain language, focusing on the business impacts, the business context, using visuals, being concise, and then offering actionable recommendations. I think all of that, when you talked about training, I don't know if that fits into this, the training and the cyber expertise of the board, or how is the board informed? Because there's a really a certain way to communicate with the board that most technologists maybe don't have that skill set, or we're not trained in it.
Yeah, I think especially for mid and small and mid organizations, mid-sized organizations, this is going to be a specific challenge where they don't have all the resources to put together a structured communication and learning. So absolutely agree with that thought. Diana, you have your hand up.
Okay. So yeah, the other thing is that I've noticed with a lot of the CISOs that I'm helping lately, I mentor or advise, that there's this confusion, especially it got worse after the Joe Sullivan conviction. There's this confusion about that CISOs feel that they need to push the board to accept what they're saying, that somehow they're going to be liable if the board doesn't make certain security assumptions that are in line with the CISO, and not understanding that you're not a requirer for you're the advisor for the business, you're the educator for the business. You try and lead them to the right solution, but that you can't get sort of angry with them if they don't decide that their decisions about risk for the business don't align with your decisions about risk for the business. So I think helping them to calm down. And I have two CISOs I know got let go in the last few weeks over this exact point. They so desperately want the business to do the right thing that what the CEO and the board feels is they overstepped.
Yeah, so no, I agree. I think we are seeing very defensive posture from the CISOs, especially after the case. By the way, I think you all know, or at least I have shared with most of you that Joe did come back and contribute to the first chapter, is already part of the program. And both from him as a case study, I think it's been a very a tremendous learning experience for a lot of us. And we have to clarify. Thank you, Mark. We'll have to learn from that experience. I think we have the opportunity also to read through the court cases, actually what happened, on the technical grounds on which this happened, and have a clear idea on the three types of liability. One is the corporation's liability as such, then the board and directors, the director and officers liability, and then the personal liability of the professional, which is probably where people are getting more and more sensitive and defensive about it. And it's good to have actually Brian on this call subsequently to get his thoughts on, from a prosecutorial landscape, how this is addressed. We have offered the different prosecutors who have been part of this Sullivan versus US case, especially in the Uber case, we have offered them to come and share their opinion with us. They have directed, of course, us to the court documents that are already in file until and unless the sentencing is complete. They don't want to talk about it, but I believe that's going to be a very important and key precedent that is set, that now there's a verdict there, then there's a sentencing following it. What does it take to remedy this kind of situations, especially for a professional which doesn't have the same level of personal liability than which is there for the medical professionals or legal professionals, right? There is not a bar association for security people yet, and not a college of physicians, right? So
yeah, and it's not even clear. I mean, I think some people are not clear. I've had to explain that it wasn't because there was a breach. It wasn't because there was a patch. The Uber case went around obstructing justice, a felony, right? Not about, and I think that there's a lot of, because I've literally had some people say, I'm not sure I want to be a CISO. I could go to jail if I don't patch. And I'm like, that's not it, which I think is leading to this sort of, as you said, that defensive crouch. So yeah, I think anything we could explain to CISOs, to the board, about how they can work in tandem, rather than what I think could be a schism if it doesn't get addressed.
Right. So I think towards that, I will offer through this forum 3 opportunities to directly learn from the people who are involved. First, we'll have Joe come and talk to us about his personal experience. I think it's very cathartic for him, also very hard for him to again and again say the same thing. But I think we want to hear from him directly, so that we can dispel any of the doubts that we have around his personal involvement. Second is we have offered, as I said, we'll have prosecutors that have been involved, and also his defense attorneys, and hopefully Uber can come and say, right, I think it's a huge learning moment for us, and we should not miss that. So that's kind of the approach we are taking. We are a neutral environment, and we want to make sure people come and share their views so that others don't go through the same challenge. But thank you for making the point on that, Anna. Very well taken. So we are a few minutes on the top of the hour. I believe this turned out to be a pretty good discussion, a great dry run for several subsequent meetings to come. I would request each of you, those who are joined here and also those who are listening to this recording, to share the specific slots where we would have a focused one-on-one discussion with you for 30 minutes to get your full point of view and everything registered for the contribution for the chapter. I'm sure the discussion is ongoing, but I would want to get your focused thoughts on that across the 4 areas. If you can bring a case study, that is great. If not, we'll work towards getting a case study procured. Arunish and team has been very diligent in making sure that we have a very clear structure how we do this. In the next, I think about 10 weeks we have between now and RSA, we're going to have at least 12 to 14 meetings, and those 12 meetings would have at least 2 contributors recorded. So we're going to breeze through this in the next few weeks. That's why we have several backup plans. Like if Arunish or I or one of us are not able to be here, somebody can run this meeting and continue with that with the process. And as I mentioned, every 2 weeks we will try to turn around with the transcript for review by the group. We're going to send some surveys out after we do at least 2 of these meetings this week, at the end of this week, to get your thoughts in. But that's a formal mechanism too for a wider audience. But for you individually, if you have anything, just let us know. One thing that I should share for a more collaboration, we are trying to equip our members with collaborative platform. And Maya, you are familiar with this now that we are working with this particular platform, that we have some serious privacy issues. Again, my personal approach would be making sure that they take corrective action. We persuade them to take the right actions rather than just shutting the door on them. I think if we learn from this exercise, we can probably help many others, but not necessarily the only option available in the market. There are others. We would do this probably a little bit of external due diligence to find out what other options are available. But again, extend the courtesy of this forum to the platform at least selected now to get better at privacy, and probably they would end up being one of our most vocal advocates. And that's the optimist in me talking, that people will learn from their journey and be able to share with others their experience. So in terms of the holistic platform, we have a cyber board book intake form that's available, and that has been shared with you all, at least those that are part of this distribution list. Second, there is a Zoom call and this webinar format, 2 days, one Tuesday morning Central Time, one Wednesday evening Central Time, to give extended audience the opportunity to contribute. And then this discussion goes on to the collaboration platform. Right now it's Mighty, and we'll continue to see, of course, you heard as Brian, we have access to him for privacy, not only from the prosecutorial side, but also he's a practitioner in this space. So we'll put together probably, first thing we do is put a privacy committee together that can help guide, coach other organizations in the same journey. But for this board book initiative, I really thank you for being on this call, contributing to your thoughts, and subsequently we will have focused discussions. We'll try to keep it 45 minutes for your time, and everybody can drop off after that. But 45 minutes of 2 slots, so we're going to get at least 2 recordings done towards the chapter. We have a similar meeting tomorrow as a dry run with those that are not able to join this morning. Tomorrow evening, it's focused on the North American time zone and the APAC time zone, and we'll get that recording done and share with everyone. So thank you. We'll give an hour back to your calendars. Hopefully you have a great rest of the day and evening, and please let us know your feedback. How can you improve this process? We are learning as much as you all are through this process. So the running of the program versus actual learning content that we have to build. So keep those channels open. Thank you again for joining, and I'm sure we'll see you next time.